Good evening. My name is Lisa, and I am the wife of one amazing and supportive husband and the mother of 7 pretty fantastic children. But I stand here in front of you tonight not because of anything I've done, nor the accomplishments of my husband or any of my children. I stand here tonight because of something completely outside of my control and a life milestone I would never have chosen. In September of 2011, my daughter Miranda was born, and 28 days later, she died. I look around this room, and I'm pretty overwhelmed. The faces here represent every gender, every race, every social status. You all have lost children of all ages. But there's one thing that ties us all together. We've survived the unthinkable, the loss of one or more of our dear children. Suddenly, all of our differences fade a bit as we find a common voice among the people in this world that have a small understanding to the upside-down world that we've been living in since the day we said goodbye. Regardless of how you ended up here, I hope that you can relate when I say that there's nothing that ever truly prepares you for the reality of losing your child. When our family arrived here at Hopkins, we knew very little about why or how we had gotten to the point of needing this level of care. She was born in a planned home birth. We were very low risk. We had birthed 3 other children at home before with no complications. But shortly after she was born and cried, she entered into respiratory distress and was transported to the nearest hospital. But it didn't end there. Johns Hopkins was the 3rd hospital that she was at. She needed the full support of ECMO. We knew once we got here that things were very critical. We didn't know whether she would live or die, but we knew for sure that our lives were changing. As a woman who had just given birth hours before, my arms ached with emptiness and unknown. She laid there right in front of me, but I lacked any ability to help her. I had never felt so insufficient as a woman and as a mother. As my friend drove me to the hospital on the 2nd day, I cried to her as I stubbornly admitted that I refused to pump milk while I was in the PICU with her. There was so much that was outside of my control that I thought that that was the one area that I could control. I was fairly certain she wasn't going to survive, and the last thing I wanted to do was worry about having milk dry up and deal with loss. Soon after, I changed my mind, and I began pumping in the PICU. And that became a small task that I got to do daily that made me feel involved in her care. And much to my surprise, we even had the opportunity while she was on ECMO to give her some supplemental feeds. And then in the coming months, I was able to leave with a cooler full of milk that was donated to help friends' babies who needed the extra support. So no small moment goes unrewarded, no matter how bittersweet it is. The first time I would hold my daughter would be the moments that she was removed from life support. And this is a picture of me waiting for that moment. As a wife, I couldn't imagine how my husband felt. He had waited 9 months to finally meet and hold our daughter. And now, in the first weeks of her life, he was being forced to say goodbye. I stared down my own experiences of couples that I knew whose relationship didn't survive grief, and I was scared. On the hospital drive over between the 1st and 2nd hospital, all I could do was apologize. I didn't know what I was apologizing for. I knew that none of those words were going to change the situation that we were in, but it was the little thing that I could do. And even today, there are still moments that I sit and apologize because we don't see eye to eye on grief. We didn't see eye to eye in all aspects of loss. We both grieve differently, and there's grace there. And so while I can't do anything to change the past, we can choose together to look forward intentionally, and that's what we purpose to do. As a mother, I couldn't imagine how I was going to walk my other children through the tragedy of losing their sister at such a young age. While we may not have ever been able to provide them all of their wants in life, up until that point, I was pretty confident that we were giving them everything that they needed to thrive in this world. Yet here we stood with their youngest sister in a bed fighting to breathe. I felt like I had failed to give them the basic reassurances they needed in life, to know that their dad and I could handle anything that life dealt us. We now have no answers for their toughest questions. Their innocence to death is gone, and for that, I hate it, and I'm thankful for it, because I watch my children now, and I see compassion beyond their ages, and I can't help but be thankful for that. With all these doubts and thoughts of failure, I, like you, have been tasked to live life as a surviving parent. Everything about that term seems to go against nature. We're not supposed to outlive our children. We're supposed to plan birthday parties, graduation parties, weddings, not plan funerals, and not choose burial plots. We've been robbed of all those milestones. And for that, I can look at each and every one of you and say that I am so sorry for your loss, because it's not fair. So instead of getting to plan all those things that we thought were coming for us and all the plans we had made for our children's lives, we get this invitation each year. And it's really bittersweet. For some of you, this might be your first experience here at the tribute service, and grief is still raw, and I understand that. I remember the first months of our family's grief journey, wondering if it would be okay or when it would be okay for us to laugh and smile again. And what about when we did laugh and smile? Would those around us understand that that was just on the surface and that inside we were very broken and still torn up? Very few friends and family members understand that, or even try to. The first Thanksgiving after Miranda died, I remember posting a picture of myself on Facebook of the day and sharing that. And I got this onslaught of comments about how glad everybody was to see that I was smiling again, as if suddenly I had just made it okay for them to move on and for them to be comfortable with my grief. I was pretty upset. And I can tell you honestly that most of them are not my friends. We might be acquaintances, but that's about all that they're willing to be because they no longer want to go deep with me. I have little patience for things like that. Are you afraid to smile? Your smile and zest for life, when you feel it, does amazing honor to your child's legacy. And those of us in this room, we understand the dance of simultaneous joy and sadness that we experience. You don't owe it to anyone to make your grief palatable for them. Maybe you've attended this service for many years and you're wondering if it is time to move on. This is our 6th invitation. The first one came exactly 6 months after Miranda's birth. Of course, this year I obligated our family to come by accepting the invitation to speak. But each year when that invitation arrives in our mailbox, we have a decision to make. Are we going to go about our daily routine, or are we going to take this time to be here? It was our 3rd year into the grief journey that the invitation came, and we realized, well, we have children in Scouts, we've got girls that have to go to the dance studio, we won't go this year. But then that day came, and everything just felt off. because in going about our normal routine, we kind of felt the weight of giving up that opportunity to be here and just enjoy the one daughter that we don't get to go to those award ceremonies and dance recitals for. We just don't get that opportunity often enough to say the name out loud and to just celebrate what we do have. So if you're in a similar season, I want to remind you that the timeline of our grief is controlled by no one other than ourselves. It's not time to move on unless you feel that it is. You're always welcome among this community, and your story, being years out, helps those of us that haven't been on this path as long. We need to hear of your experiences. The journey of grief is nothing other than a roller coaster. The problem is we don't get the choice to get off the line and go find something easier. We kind of sit there white-knuckling through it all. People think we're strong and brave. They see that, but we don't. I don't feel brave. I don't feel strong. There are a lot of days that I still feel like I'm in survival mode. Grief has taught me many lessons about myself that I never wanted to learn. It has exposed some of my biggest weaknesses. When Miranda was in the hospital, I remember vowing to myself about how I wouldn't squander the small moments. I would be a good and patient and intentional mom, a better mom to all of my children. And I remember the guilt of the first time that I walked into my children's room to find the mess that still wasn't cleaned up, or the pile of dishes that I had to wash again after reminding them that that was their job, and I yelled at them. And suddenly, the weight of realizing I didn't become a perfect mom when my daughter died. I'm still as human as I always was, and in moments of desperation, I can still lose my cool. I may or may not have threatened one of my daughters yesterday, telling her that she needed to be out in front of the school at 4:20 this afternoon or she was going to be left in Tawnytown. It's life. We still have to live it. This crazy grief journey has also developed strengths that I never knew I could have. Dealing with my own loss has opened up my eyes to what others could be suffering through. I remember walking through the grocery store shortly after she passed away and just kind of being really annoyed that everyone else's lives were still going on like nothing ever happened. Like, why was mine the only world that was crumbling? I was offended. But then it kind of opened my eyes, and I started to realize if I was walking around in pain and no one else understood that, then what about everyone else that I was encountering? What were they dealing with beneath the surface that I didn't know or understand? And so now I hope I'm a little slower to judge and a little quicker to listen, knowing that the greatest healing that I've felt is when people have allowed me to just talk and be. Grief has also tested the authenticity of my faith in God and allowed me to question the unquestionable and to be angry with him. I'm mad. I don't understand. I don't know why my daughter died. But I trust him. I believe he is who he says he is, and that someday I'll see her again. She'll be pain-free, and we'll have eternity together. And that he redeems ashes for beauty in ways that I can't begin to comprehend. But I still wear the disappointment of never being able to have a complete family picture. We were blessed with a daughter after Miranda passed away, but she's never met her big sister. She's now 4 years old and says her sister's name, but it's the one she's never met, although she thinks it's her baby sister, even though it's not like that. People look at my children and they see their stair-step ages. They're 2 years apart until you get to the last ones, and there's 4 years between them. And there are some people that know that we have a daughter between them. There are some people that wonder but don't ask. And there are a few that do ask, and we get to share the story of Miranda with them. It's not easy to recover from that missing piece, and there's no rush to do it. So tonight, as we leave here, we'll remember this room of compassionate friends. And I hope, as we return to our normal lives that seem anything but normal, that, like me, you can take with you encouragement that you are not alone on this grief journey. Although all of our experiences are different, there is that tie that binds. And that we're going through this journey as precariously as the person next to us. We're smiling and crying and working and living. Some days are better than others. We just keep putting one foot in front of the other and asking for a hand of support when we need it and when we want it. Thank you.